The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid, if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Good evening, Night Owls, and welcome to a very special Damn You Hollywood, brought to you by the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Tonight, the, well, sort of unholy trinity. We seem to be short a few people.
At least the unholy duo.
Yeah, unholy duo, I can go with that. Your favorite horror nuts are here to talk about one of the best reviewed and highest grossing horror films so far of 2024, Late Night with the Devil. And here's your host. You know he's only here because Jimmy Fallon sure as hell didn't want this job, Mr. Robert Winfree.
Yeah, Mark would have had Jimmy's legs broke.
Hey, I know your interest, okay? I could have said Stephen Colbert.
You could have, and I would have said the same thing at this point. There was a time that would have been great, and over the last 4 or 5 years, no, Mark would have been like, okay, I'm going to hire someone to break your legs. We are, again, special bonus Damn You Hollywood tonight, which is always a good thing. And yeah, you know, the horror scene for 2024 is off to a bit of a slower start. I mean, you know, 2024 is kind of a wasteland in general because everything got pushed back due to the myriad strikes last year.
And then everything else got canceled because the studios weren't making any money and they need a year to heal their wounds.
Some of them. Disney. You don't have to fake cough that one. We all know. But in fairness, there's a handful of horror movies slated to come out this year that I'm actually looking forward to. So I expect things to pick up. You know, you've got actually 2 with Nicolas Cage later this year that both look at least moderately intriguing.
Very true. Nice to see I'm back to doing, I'm making as many movies as I can because I'm broke, but not I'm making as many bad movies as I can because I'm broke.
I think the last couple of years have done enough to rehab his general image and career that he's not having to do the bottom of the barrel stuff.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, we're talking specifically Long Legs and Arcadia, both of which had trailers ahead of this one. Of course, there's also the dregs of the barrel that are slated to come out, like Tarot, which looks so painful that...
You know, okay, I give the credit to the design of the tarot cards they show, and I like the idea of the creatures from the cards being the killers, but at the same time, I've done my fair share of fortune telling, and I have, and I always like going to the fortune telling booths at Ren fairs and such, so I know what I'm talking about when I say that is not how tarot cards work.
Yeah, but since when does that matter? But oh man, that trailer! Like I watched the trailer would have been last year, I think it was ahead of something. I just sat there and I went, oh boy, this is about as painfully generic as possible.
Yeah, and like I said, I just looked at them like, do the producers ever actually? It's like, do they know what tarot cards are, or do they assume that that's just a fancy way of playing poker?
Could be. But we do have again Late Night with the Devil tonight, and fortunately, you know, the trailer for this dropped not too long ago. This had a very abbreviated advertising, like PR campaign before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
But looked intriguing, and thankfully we got a mostly good film out of this. So
Yeah, remember I sent the link after I saw I don't know if it was the first trailer or like the second trailer, but not only did it have clips of it, which looked intriguing, but they were showing all this positive feedback, including a glowing recommendation from Stephen King himself. So I was just like, okay,
there was a time
you
that
have
would
my
have meant
attention.
something. There was a time King's recommendation meant a lot more than it does nowadays.
Very true, but it still had my attention from that. So did a little more looking and thought, okay, this actually looks really cool. Hey, boys, who wants to review this?
Yep, and here we are.
All right. So yes, Late Night with the Devil, distributed by. I will say this is my only complaint is that watching again, I saw this in the theater with a full group, and literally after I think like the fifth production company, I was just like, who else made this movie?
I was waiting for a pantsless production thing to come up, and that Mark had chipped in a couple of bucks at some point.
I was thinking more of that scene from Family Guy where he talks about about how Peter can't tell if the movie's actually starting or if it's just a really weird production company to the point that you have a guy in the rain who's been stabbed and it looks like the movie's starting. It's like stabbed guy running in the rain, terrified productions.
Yeah, not wrong, not wrong.
Okay,
so get ready for the laundry list, people.
All right, so yes, production companies: Image Nation, Abu Dhabi. Ugh. This is off to a great start. Vic Screen, AGC Studios, Good Friend Films, Mutual Pictures, and Spooky Pictures. Distributed by ISC Films and Shudder. So this actually was released last year at the SXSW Film Festival. Got its wide release this year on March 22nd. Stars, I already know we're going to like probably pronounce this poor guy's name a million ways. David Dastmalchian. David Dastmalchian, who you have undoubtedly seen in a ton of other movies. This guy has really been climbing up the social ladder of importance. We first saw him as one of Joker's accomplices in The Dark Knight. Saw him later in the first two Ant-Man movies as one of Scott Lang's associates. We recently saw him in the first Dune movie as what do you call them? The MTATs?
Yeah.
Yeah, the living computers.
Not a Mentat. It's where there's a reason that if you've ever played Fallout, the Mentats that you eat to boost that stat temporarily, it's one of the drugs. That name is taken from that class of people in Dune.
Yeah. Oh, and of course, in James Gunn's Suicide Squad as the Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man.
Who was
Color Spray.
I normally don't like killing people, but if I pretend it's my mom, it's okay.
Tracks.
No, he was really enjoyable in that. So it's really great to see him getting to lead a film as the main actor. It's not often you get to see a lot of actors who kind of get niched into that supporting character role, really break away and get to lead a film on their own. So credit to him for getting this opportunity.
Well, that is one of the other great things about the horror genre. They're more willing, especially if you're willing to take a chance as an actor, they're willing to give just about anybody a shot, again, to lead something. So, but kind of on that note, dear horror studios, can we get Paul Giamatti in something, please? He's expressed a love for the genre.
It's not his fault. He was led to believe that The Lady in the Water would be something it's not.
I know. I don't blame him for that.
No, that was not his fault.
We're 20 years on from that particular damp squib of a film. Can we get him in a Dr. Loomis kind of role, please? Please?
Oh, shit, that would have been good casting. I mean, nothing against Malcolm McDowell as Loomis, but Paul Giamatti's Loomis would have been great.
Still would be. More than enough time for that to play out.
All right. Well, you know what? I think we have just shot the shit long enough. Why don't we go ahead and get into the plot synopsis of this film?
Well, as you might have guessed from the title, this is about a late night talk show featuring the devil. And no, I don't mean Conan O'Brien. We open with a documentary style intro talking about the rise of our titular character, Jack Delroy.
Delroy.
Yeah.
Yeah, narrated
reason,
by Michael Ironside of all people.
Love that guy, but yeah, that's the kind of thing he does. I don't mean that negatively. Like, Ron Perlman does those kind of things too, where despite being, B-list guy, he'll just, if you send him the money and it's a voice role, he'll do it.
He's got a great voice.
He really does. I mean, he narrates about half of the UFC intros these days.
Oh,
for
really?
Individual event. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Well, benefits of being owned by a talent agency. He started after WME bought the UFC, so. But we open with the documentary style thing about this poor guy who's originally was a DJ in Chicago, but moved to New York, got a late night talk show, and is doing well. But this starts in 1968, and nobody was beating Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show back then.
Mm-hmm.
So the thrust for this character is he is perpetually stuck behind Johnny Carson, and it doesn't seem to matter what he does. He has a good show, he's good at the job, but he can't beat Johnny Carson. And his wife gets lung cancer and passes away.
Important to note that she gets lung cancer, even though it's confirmed she's a non-smoker and always has been. Correct. That's an important point.
It is, yeah, that plays a role later. Of course, these days, you get lung cancer if you've used Roundup too often. And I wish I was joking about that.
No, you're right.
Currently a class action lawsuit, see if you qualify. I only know because my family does. So he comes back, leans a little bit towards a proto Jerry Springer approach for a little bit, and then goes to leaning into the occult and mysticism, and not quite to the level of crossing over, which God help us was a thing.
Don't remind me.
And the show we watch is presented as the live. This is still live TV. Nowadays, not so much, but back then, live. This is the live Halloween edition of his particular show.
The year playing on Halloween, 1977.
77. I almost had the timeline right. Because again, it starts 68, 5-year contract. Yeah, that's how it would have lined up. And what he has lined up, we then follow this show. It's presented as a combination of the broadcast feed and some behind the scenes footage that has been found later. And the movie actually shifts between aspect ratios because when it's the broadcast, it switches to what would be the aspect ratio for television back in 1977. And the documentary, behind the scenes stuff is shot in modern widescreen formatting. So it's a fun little technical trick there. And it follows an episode of a late night talk show. He comes out, he does the monologue, complete with appropriate references for 1977, like making fun of President Carter's brother.
And poking fun at his sidekick, Gus.
You gotta poke the sidekick.
Yeah.
And then he brings out a fairly traditional scam artist psychic, Christu, complete with fake accent and very loud gold shirt.
Yeah, again, talking about the whole crossing over thing, if you have known anything about psychics and cold readings, then you see through Christu's act a mile away.
Yeah, he very clearly uses a combination of cold reading, information farming from a plant in the audience, that kind of stuff. It's very obvious when you know what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. But he does his shtick, and it's moderately successful. And then as they're about to throw to commercial, he gets a genuine premonition, and he starts bleeding from the nose, and his
eyes roll back into his skull. Oh my God, that was creepy. Ugh.
And he sort of recovers. Then we go to commercial break, so we switch aspect ratios, and he's trying to recover. and we bring out, and again, there's a thing in the back where it's building tension because our guests are, again, we have Christou, we have this universe's version of the great Randy, who, bless that man. If you're not familiar with James Randi and his work, by all means, look it up. This guy dedicated the back half of his life after being a magician and mentalist to exposing and debunking frauds. And
Carmichael, the conjurer, who he carries around a check for, what was it, $500,000?
It's $100,000 at first, and he's willing to bump it up later.
Yeah, he carries around a check with him at all times, and he says if anyone can prove to him that psychic abilities are real, he will give them the check. And this is actually founded in or grounded in reality. There are various groups who will say they will give a fortune, like over $1 million, to anyone who can prove that psychic powers are real. And guess what? It's been 40 years and no one's been able to successfully claim that check.
Well, again, this guy's based on James Randi, and that was his thing. He said to anyone and everyone, here's my money. I'll put my money where my mouth is. You come, you do your trick. Then I'm going to impose something on you. And if you're legit, you can still do it. And if you've never seen these frauds squirm, because everybody and their dog thinks they're smarter than he is. And some of these people are deluded enough to think that maybe it's real. Watching them come out and go, okay, here's my thing. And they do it. And he goes, okay, I know how you did this because this is what I do. So here's something that if what you're doing is real, this will not bother you at all. By way of example, there's a guy who used to claim he had telekinetic powers, and he would stand, 4 feet away from a phone book that's opened and do the big thing with his hands and push forward, and my energy is now turning the pages of the book. And Randy looked at this and said, okay. He then put packing peanuts all around the phone book. Said, this won't affect anything, but if you're doing what I think you're doing, which is just cleverly blowing air and distracting us with your hand movements, they'll move. If you're not, nothing's going to happen. Pages will turn and you get your money. And watching this guy just putter around for minutes on end because he knows he's dead to rights but won't admit it. That kind of thing.
I was actually thinking, because they even make a mention to it. I have no idea what the guy's name was. The famous spoon bender.
Oh, there's a few of those. Yeah, but
yeah, because I remember when they actually brought him on, but they gave him their spoons. Like, yeah, we just got this from our cafeteria, and obviously he couldn't bend
couldn't do it anymore. Well, the good ones can. There's a way to do it. I forget the exact way. Like the real tricky ones don't bend them until they break. They actually twist them. And there's a way to do it. That's perfectly rational, explainable. But yeah, there was a guy on the Johnny Carson show actually that you're kind of referencing, a famous psychic. And Randy said, look, he's going to give you a bunch of these things. Let him do his thing, then bring out these ones, tell him to do it again. And he won't be able to. And of course he did. And then he hemmed and hawed on live TV for like 10 minutes. And it's hilarious. So we bring out that guy. This is Carmichael. And he kind of explains what's up with Christou's shtick. Then Christou, who is now not in a good way.
Yeah, he's sweating. He's getting twitchy. He looks like he's about to just, collectively shit his pants, if you will.
And then proceeds to vomit violently all over the place. We go to another commercial. He's escorted to the back and like, please get me to the hospital. He dies en route, just hemorrhaging that wouldn't stop.
Yes, after projectile vomiting black goo all over Carmichael's very expensive coat.
Yeah, like you do. But who's brought out next is kind of the crux of what we've got here. Again, these are based on real people. So if you're old enough and the setup here sounds familiar, this is everything about this movie and the story they're telling is drawn from real people who have really done this kind of stuff, absent the genuine supernatural phenomena at the end. So we bring out a doctor of parapsychology, and at least Dr. Venkman was a doctor of parapsychology and psychology. He had both of them, double doctorate. And she is the legal guardian of the only survivor of a satanic cult that, again, based on these things were fairly common. Not just the paranoia about them from this time period, but genuinely people messing around with stuff they shouldn't. But this particular, again, this was, I forget the exact one this is based on, but they use actual police footage from a similar shootout for this.
Yeah, and these guys basically pull the Jim Jones method of saying if we can't do what we want, then screw you all, and they set them all on fire and burn the church down. This girl Lily was the only survivor, 10 years old at the time.
Yeah, and so this doctor's been working with her and claims that there is a demon that partially possesses this poor girl. So they come out, and this is where we get some of the tension, because Jack wants a live demonstration of this entity because he's just desperate to get the top spot.
Carmichael is, of course, poking the bear, going, "Oh, absolutely! I'd love to see, you bring. Well, what's the Abraxas?
Yeah,
credit that is a real name that shows up in your various, demon mythologies."
Yeah. And so again, there's that and the doctor isn't sure this is a great idea, but Lily's all for it for reasons that will become apparent. And
Lily's
eventually,
adorable, but very awkward.
I appreciate that actress hitting the right balance of creepy but earnest. Like that's a really hard line to walk, because if you're on the wrong end either way, then the creepiness doesn't work, or you don't feel bad for the kid. I mean, for as good as The Omen is, the original in particular, Damien is just too creepy to be all that believable as an innocent little boy.
Especially the remake that came out in 2006. That I remember watching that. And I'm like, I think you guys missed what the point of the Antichrist kind of was. It's like, yeah, no one is going to look at this kid and say, "Oh no, he's a perfectly fine little boy. He's perfectly." No, that kid was evil.
Yeah, it's a hard line to walk, and this actress, it might even be harder for teenagers because nobody likes teenagers.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to defend that based on last night's discussion, but no.
Look, man, we were all teenagers and we all thought people liked us, and then we hit like the mid-20s and realized, oh no. That's the arc, man. Everyone, every generation, that's the arc. We all go the same way. So credit to her for that. But they do agree to the demonstration, so they bring out a chair, they strap the poor girl down. The doctor brings out this demonic entity who pokes around at Jack, pokes around at the audience a little bit.
Electricity goes haywire. She makes the chair levitate.
Yep. And it's just, again, it's off-putting enough that everyone's kind of convinced. And then Carmichael gets up and goes, "After this break, let me rebut this because I can." So they give him the shot.
Yeah. What's the line? He's like, "You got 5 minutes, Yeah,
5 minutes, make it count. So he brings over Gus, poor Gus, and hypnotizes him because the doctor had publicly said, like, hypnotherapy is part of what I've done with Lily.
Mm-hmm.
So he hypnotizes not just Gus, but the audience.
And Jack and I think they said, like, with the exception of a few people in the audience and Lily.
Yeah.
Everyone else bought it, which also leads to the creepiest scene in the whole freaking movie, if you ask me.
1,000,000% yes.
Yeah, because we established that Gus is terrified of worms.
So he reaches up onto his neck and he pulls out a big old worm, and
which is somehow like been in his neck, like he's got a little nick on his neck from where he was shaving, and all of a sudden that nick's a hole, and he's like, "And there come the worms," and then
he starts freaking out. Yeah, opens his shirt, grabs his stomach, pulls it apart, and just worms ooze out, and then his eye pops out, and his head starts splitting, and then Carmichael breaks the hypnotic trance, and everything's normal. And everyone's like, what's going on? So they replay for everyone what actually happened via the cameras.
Because while they may have been hypnotized, footage isn't going to lie. And you
Yeah.
see, again, poor Gus, who's perfectly fine, basically freaking out, ripping his shirt open, screaming on camera. And I do love that they do this as a picture-in-picture, because you could see Gus in the background in the main screen, and he is just like, oh God. He is so embarrassed, and he just has this look on it. He's burying his face. He's just like, oh, you feel so sorry for this poor guy.
More so in a minute or two.
Yeah.
And so that's Carmichael's statement. Like, look, that's what we did.
Massive gnosis is a thing.
It is. So Lily and the doctor then push back and go, well, show ours then. Because if that's what was done when we did it, same thing will play out.
Well, actually, the doctor doesn't. Lily pushes. The doctor doesn't want this to continue anymore because she's starting to think something's going wrong.
Yeah, she was always a little bit like, I'm not sure I want to do this, and kind of gets pushed over and over again into going further than she knows she should. So Lily kind of pushes for it, and as they're replaying, there's some messing with the video feed. We get a bit where we flash over and we see Jack's dead wife standing beside him. And then all hell breaks loose.
Literally.
Then the demonic entity takes possession of Lily, splits her head open.
That was actually no blood and gore, but somehow it's even more frightening. There's like you would imagine a TV being opened up in her head.
And she starts channeling electricity through the different things. She proceeds to, poor Gus. He said earlier, because this is around the time The Exorcist came out. So when he says, you're going to do something to me, you hope you don't make my head spin around. So naturally, got to be able to see behind you sometimes, buddy. So he's dead. The doctor gets hauled into the air via a chain around her neck and her throat slit open. Jack gets launched across the stage, but not killed because we'll see it more in a minute.
I love Carmichael's death, though, especially as he's looking at this demonic entity come to life. He falls to his knees. He reaches into his coat. He pulls out the check.
This is it. This is something I can't explain.
Yeah, and you realize he's not expecting this demon to pay the check, to take the check, obviously. He's not trying to bribe. It's just he has nowhere else to go. He can think of nothing else to do but just admit, I was wrong.
You got me. Then he proceeds to be set on fire.
Along with the check.
And melt. Then Jack escapes through one of the sliding doors to the back. And we get our bizarre art house dream sequence where he flashes back through so much of his previous career, other moments where, and then it's mentioned earlier, but he is part of this world's iteration on what is a real thing in the real world. They call it the Grove in that one. I forget what it is in the real world. It's, depending on how deep you want to go on the conspiracy theorist side of things, on the surface, it's a bunch of very powerful people who get together and, hobnob and network and all that kind of stuff. I forget where it is. It's back east, I want to say. And if you're more conspiracy minded, this is kind of what this intimates, which is a giant cult. It's where you go to pledge your undying loyalty, to you covenant to murder for hire, to murder so that you can get gain and all that gnarly stuff. And frankly, I have no problem believing that that's true. Just the way the world is. But he's associated with this. And now we flash back to some of that. And his promise that he's willing to sacrifice things. And it's intimated that's what gave his wife cancer. And as she lays dying, and this is one of my other minor gripes with this movie, I appreciate you trying to take a perfectly healthy woman and make her look like she's dying of lung cancer and has been for several years. But everything apart from her face is so obviously healthy that I struggle with that one. But she requests that she be put out of her misery because late-stage lung cancer will make you wish for the grave.
And it will.
And he agrees, and he picks up the ceremonial dagger, and he stabs her, and then we flash back to reality where he has just stabbed Lily through the chest. And everyone is dead around him, and the last bit we get is him desperately trying to wake himself from a hypnotic trance, because please don't let this be real.
As you hear the police sirens starting to get louder in the back, and it cuts to black, and it says end of transmission in the corner, but then it flashes, so it is done.
Indeed. And that is Late Night with the Devil.
All right, so this, first of all, this film really does take advantage of the time period. I think they did a really good job making the shots that were supposed to be the lost footage actually look like it. A couple things we talked about before the show started. This movie has no score.
Yeah.
Now they do have a house band on set, of course. So every time Jack, needs to go to commercial, comes back, it's like, we'll be right back after this commercial break. Then you got that music. Yeah. But other than that, there is no music to help build up the scare. So this movie is relying very much so on the atmosphere and the tone and the cinematography, which is always impressive. Mm. So we got that. David again, I massacred this poor man's name. Dastmalchian was, I think, really great in this. Again, proof that this man can lead a movie. So I really do hope this is not the only time we see him in the lead role. I think he's got what it takes.
Yeah, especially for this smaller scale. I don't mean smaller budget. I just mean not to beat this particular dead horse, but being the lead in different kinds of movies is also very different. And he is absolutely well suited to this kind of thing and does not have to be second banana in that particular respect. He does a great job.
Yeah, you really just see the back and forth with his character, his professionalism when he is on set and when he is on camera and how well he hosts. But then you cut to the behind the scenes footage, which I like that they also keep that black and white. It kind of reminds me when I used to work as a professional photographer. The actual framed focused on shots were always going to be in color, but we always had a background photographer who was taking shots just more photo journalism style, and those pictures were always kept in black and white. Kind of, brought me back to that. Everything all good?
Yeah, sorry. Just had a thing over there that had to get up for half a second.
Oh, okay. So we have that. And I do love, again, how quickly he goes back and forth. He is also extremely manipulative. And when we see him behind the camera, it's not made clear, but it's hinted that he and June, the doctor, have been having a romantic thing going on. Because you see how close they are, how she begs him to actually not do the same. She's like, look, something's wrong with Lily. I don't want to go through with this. And the way he holds her and talks to her and everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much so if you love me, you'll do this for me. I think we've all been in a relationship like that at least once in our lives. Not with a TV host who wants us to, do a devil channeling on live TV, but you get the point. I love the conversations he has with Lou, his producer, on the side.
That's an interesting setup there. Because Lou is very much, egging him on to make all these terrible decisions.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you even get to the point, the last cut before all hell breaks loose. And Lou tells him, we've got the numbers. The phones are lit up. We are actually higher than Carson.
Yeah.
It's like, you got your wish.
You wanted to be the most famous late night talk show host of all time. Well, the line between famous and infamous is really thin, and you want to be very careful about that in contract negotiations.
What's the most popular phrase in horror? Be careful what you wish for.
Indeed. So yeah, that was good. I'm with you that the most disturbing scene is actually the stuff with the worms, and all hats off to the practical effects that went into all of that, because almost none of that is done digitally, it seems. They just put a prosthetic stomach on Gus, let him tear into it, and had things ooze out of it.
That's actually interesting, because there's a couple of scenes early on where the CGI is a little lacking. Specifically, the scene with Christou vomiting the black bile.
That
looked terrible.
That was not great.
And I can't help but get the feel, because I watched and I was like, oh, okay. And I was actually worried, like, tell me the CGI is not going to be that like this. But the CGI in the final scene looks incredible. So I'm sitting here thinking, I guess they had a limited budget, and the director said, save the money for the important shot.
Yeah, it's a thing with VFX work. Like, no, you have to allocate time and resources. So know where it has to look good, and know where you can where it can be saved with editing tricks. Because if we had to look at that stuff with, again, Christou's vomiting, if we had to look at that as long as we were looking at the stuff in the finale, maybe we handle that differently. But again, you gotta, one of those minor concessions you have to make for time, budget, etc.
Yeah, again, the director probably looked at the money and was like, just realized they had to cut it on the on the projectile barfing is going to be the low budget moment of this movie, guys. We'll just have to deal with it.
And everyone involved was just grateful it wasn't practical.
I can't even imagine that poor actor if he was told, it's like, so we don't have the money to CGI the black bile, so here's a jug, open your mouth.
Well, and then the side-on shots, that have to get some actual distance to them. There's a different method for that too. So, yeah, again, that was probably the only truly weak bits of CGI, and on the whole, I think my only quasi complaints about this movie go as follows. You have to be aware of the tonal differences that are going to be taking place. It didn't really click with me until about halfway through the movie that this is to the movie's credit, but again, if you're not aware of it, it's going to cause some dissonance. They really leaned into the time period, and I mean that as a compliment. So everyone looks like they're from the 70s. Everyone sounds like they're from the 70s. There's no modern slang. Thankfully, here's the other thing about that. They don't lean deep into 1970s idiosyncrasies with verbiage. They use a lot of, for want of a better expression, chronologically neutral dialogue, which I think is a good choice. Because if you lean too heavily into it, it can become impenetrable if you don't know what's going on. I mean, if you've never heard, much as this is a weird example, there's an episode of Supernatural that involves time travel, which, shock of shocks, there's several of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, which one?
The one where Dean goes back to the 20s and meets, Elliot Ness.
Oh, yeah.
There's a sequence in that where Dean is using modern terminology, and it's not registering because, hey, awesome used to mean something very different.
Cool. That took a while before it was actually, yeah.
And so there's that, and then there's a scene later where Elliot Ness tells him in nothing but 1920s slang what he wants him to do, and it goes right over his head.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's that scene from Snatch with Jason Statham and Brad Pitt, and him turning around, it's like, did you understand a word of what he just said?
Yeah, it's one of those. So again, you got to kind of walk that fine line, and one of the good ways to do it, and this is true also if you, especially if you like read or write fantasy, be very careful with with contemporary English terminology, because there's not really a basis for it in your fantasy world. As a writing trick, find some slang that you want to use. If you want to use cool, okay, figure out what the in-universe equivalent of that is and use that. That will work. But otherwise, try to use very neutral language in terms of, again, how much the idiosyncratic slang. And this movie doesn't. It stays very much in that same vein. There's TV talk, which makes sense because we're dealing with a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing that, again, it feels very authentic to the time period. And if you're not aware of that going in, there's a bunch of it that's a little campy because it was a late night talk show in 1977. Of course it was campy. That's the genre. So, but that will cause a little dissonance if you're not aware of it going in. If you are, it actually helps, because going from the kind of campy, pretty generic late night talk show to, wait a minute, stuff's not right here. Wait, stuff's really not right here. Oh God, we're all like that. That's a really nice progression.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're not quite aware of it, and I'm still a little torn on the final, the surrealistic aspects of the finale.
Where he goes through the nightmare of of his past episodes.
Again, I get it. I don't, something about that doesn't quite click for me, and I'm not sure what it is. But that's meant to be that's really got to unsettle you.
Mm-hmm.
And something about it just never, again, it didn't quite hit fourth gear there.
I did appreciate him reliving signing his contract and how they segued that into the kind of, I guess you would call it, the selling his soul moment with the Grove. Especially when, if you actually listen and when they're showing that scene with Michael Ironside narrating, and they're talking about him signing, what was it, a 6-year contract, 5-year contract, you actually hear one of the reporters shout, "What did you sacrifice for this, Jack?"
Mm-hmm. And that comes back again here, and the answer is everything, pretty much. So again, it just didn't quite land for me, and I wish I could put my finger on exactly why. I don't know if it's for budgetary reasons or for aesthetic reasons. They do a lot of stagecraft there, and I mean like theater stagecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't, after what we just saw with the visual effects and whatnot, finale, downgrading to that, the way that plays out, it just didn't quite line up. It's still good, but it's a very odd beat to go from up here to trying to rebuild some tension down here before you get to the actual finale. And it's not impossible to do, and I've certainly seen movies do it worse than this one, but I do think it needs to be said, if there's another mild critique to be had, that something gets lost in transition there that I don't think they quite regain, even at the very end.
The scares in this, though, are really well done. Again, the scene with the worms is definitely the creepiest. And we talk about the concept of jump scares a lot on this show and whether or not they're really effective. But I felt that some of the jump scares in this really did a good job. Again, we mentioned the scene with Christu actually having the real premonition, screaming the name Minnie, and a married man or an unmarried man wearing a wedding ring, which of course we find out later is Jack, and Minnie was his pet name for Madeline. And just the way the camera quickly shows on Christu with the eyes rolling back and everything. And
there's some great framework that's done there, because you see his eyes start to roll back, then you just flash to them being all the way gone, then all the way back normal. And the actor is sitting there just rolling his eyes back and forth, but they intersperse some really nice cuts to make that seem much more jarring than it is if you've ever seen someone actually do that.
There's one scare in particular. It's kind of hard to explain, but it really got me. Because this is supposed to be half a found footage style movie from the 1970s, you have a lot of scratchiness with the film whenever it's actually showing the on-camera stuff. If you've ever tried to watch old footage of that, it looks kind of like the tape sort of has scratches or it breaks a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it's called when you have that horizontal line in the middle for a split second, but there's just a brief moment when we have the Conjuring, and they're talking to Mr. Wriggles, Abraxas, where you have a horizontal break in the film, and as it clears up, Abraxas or whatever jumps forward, and there's something about how it unsettles because you're noticing something's wrong with the film, and it catches you off guard with the jump scare right after that. It's so weird to describe, but it freaked me out how well paced that was.
Yeah, there's a lot of very, very good technical stuff that's done in this film in that respect. Because they're not leaning on so many traditional cues for something scary coming up. Again, there's not a score. We're on this whole thing takes place basically on the set.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally we see backstage, but backstage is just for atmosphere building. There's nothing... there's never a scare in the backstage segments.
Yeah, there is no scares. It is simply dialogue from the characters, moving the movie along and informing us Chris Dua is dead. June wants out of this. Gus is ready to leave. Didn't he say like at least 3 crew members had already walked out?
Yeah, like after the possession bit, there were several that crew members, stagehands or whatever, is like, nope, I'm out. And
they're like, screw this, I'm out of here.
Once again, the smart people in horror movies are the ones off screen for the most part.
Yeah. Another nice little thing I'll point out is the costuming, not only with the 1970s design, but since this takes place on Halloween, Jack says that they have a Halloween parade at the end of their show. Mm-hmm. This is not unheard of with late night talk shows where they would have, if people were in costume or anything, they'd have them walk around the set at the end of the show. Fun way to get them on camera and stuff. Maybe like, hey, turn on the show. It's like, maybe you'll see me kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And one thing I like is, there's a decent amount of people in the audience in costume, but it's all public domain, non-trademark stuff, but it still looks good. My favorites being the Green Witch and the dude in the skull costume, who I swear to God, I thought was going to be a bigger part of this because of the way you just see him kind of glaring at Jack through the skull mask.
And he's sitting right next to the obvious plant in the audience for the early bit who gets some laughs. And just the proximity to that guy is a little unsettling because if there's another cue there, like the unsettling stare, the guy who's a bit too still, especially in full mask, who doesn't react to anything around him, like that. Again, this is a very obvious cue to horror fans, like, oh, something's up here.
But you can't tell if he's not reacting. It's a full face mask, except for the eyes. It covers the whole. If he's laughing, good luck telling. We can't tell. He's not moving at all.
He's just, again, he's perfectly still physically.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to be perfectly still physically is deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
It's up there with, what was the other trick I heard? I forget the movie. But there's a movie where a possessed person is supposed to be just walking across screen. So to get an uncanny effect, what they did was they had the actor walk backwards.
Carrie.
Okay. And then they just reversed it when they played it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you've never seen someone walking backwards played in reverse, so that it looks like they're walking forwards, that's a little freaky.
And it wasn't just Carrie. They did that in Sin City as well. The scene where Marv climbs out of the sewer grate.
Yeah, again, it's a slightly older trick, but it works.
It just brings a nice little extra touch of unsettledness. The only problem is that then in Carrie, you have a car driving backwards in the background because someone forgot to block off the road.
Yeah. Do they even teach blocking in filmmaking anymore? That's my favorite reaction to the Fallout trailer, by the way, was somebody saying that. It's kind of like, you know what? Given the quality of that trailer, if you're going to criticize something, the blocking is in fact pretty darn poor.
Still looking forward to the series. That's going to be fun.
I'm torn on that, but there's a clear break in the Fallout games too. The first 3 and everything after are all like very different. It's a very different experience. But on the whole, this is a nice little horror movie. You know, if you need something to go see, it's quick. It's only 90 minutes. And well acted. I don't have any. It's always weird watching actors doing someone who is performing. Like, it's an added layer of what's going on that you have to be aware of. It's similar to if you've ever seen an actor play 2 roles in the same show and then is like doing one character doing the other one. Something feels off. And frequently that's if they're bad actors, you never quite tell. If they're good, it's usually an indicator that some kind of twist is coming. There's one of the earlier episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where Angel pretends to be Angelus. And this is after we've met both characters. But good guy Angel pretending to be evil Angelus is not the same as evil Angelus. And again, it's a little bit, there's just a little bit there, but when you realize, oh, it's this guy's version of this guy that was played by the same actor, it makes more sense. But you got to be a pretty good actor to pull that off. But watching these actors do someone on camera who's acting, which is what you're doing. Like, anytime you're on camera, you're performing. It's always a little bit interesting. And credit to everyone involved here. Again, you've got a suitably creepy possessed girl who never quite goes too far towards innocent and not creepy, but also never full-blown creepy, so that you don't feel bad for her when it all falls apart.
Well, you get the idea, again, she was rescued from this cult when she was 10. And so you get the idea she's probably been with them all of her life before that.
Yep.
She is now, what, 16, 17, something like that?
I forget. They mention it, but
yeah, you get the idea that, yeah, she's creepy, but in the way that you think, well, she's just not used to normal human interaction. She sits down and she's like, which camera do I look at?
Immediately just stares at the camera.
Yeah, she doesn't understand how that works, but that's not her fault. You get that she's just not used to that kind of a thing.
She's off in the way that people who are not socialized are off. And again, that's a little bit unsettling, because when you consider how much of what we do and how we interact with each other is just societal norms that we've sort of all mutually agreed to adopt. And anybody disrupting any of that is off-putting. If you want another example, it's so easy to unsettle people if they're paying attention. So her just sitting down and staring at the camera is a little unsettling, like, because we're watching this, and everyone knows you don't look at the camera on those kinds of things. And here she is doing it. What's another really good one about that? At the beginning of John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, you have a character who just walks across a street without looking. He proceeds to go on a bit of a rampage with an axe, but before that tension breaks, he's just in the background, but he's not behaving normally. Hitchcock was good about this. Famously, Strangers on a Train, the tennis scene where everyone else is looking back and forth at the ball, and then we slowly zoom in on the one guy who's just staring at, so you get a lot of little stuff like that here, and it's really well done. I think if I had another, this is not so much a big failing on this movie. I have a personal kind of pet peeve around this.
Ooh, do tell.
If you're going to start a movie with the documentary narration, you should end it with that same kind of thing. Like that break bothers me a little bit.
Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake kind of thing?
Yeah. And look, this is just a stylistic choice that I don't like. But since we open with the documentary style here, we get to that end of transmission, and I'm half waiting for Michael Ironside to come back in, and we get a brief coda around what happened afterwards, because that's kind of the setup that you do when you introduce something via somewhat omniscient narrator, or at least future narrator who has more facts, to then end it in the way that they do. Again, it's just a little off kilter for me, but that's not just this movie. That's a me thing with movies who use the same trick.
See, I like that they didn't do that. I like that it's left more to your imagination. You kind of actually have to wonder. It's like, wait, did he really just kill Lily on camera? Is he about to be arrested? Is he dead? Is this part of his hell? They we've seen that before with movies like Hellraiser, Inferno. Death is your reputation of your worst memories. So maybe him reliving this is going to be his eternity.
Again, it could be, and I know what they're going for, and I appreciate that. This is purely a personal thing that I don't like that style shift. If you introduce it in one way, ending it in a different way doesn't quite sit right with me. But again, purely personal. Not a major knock I have against the film by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, overall, there are a couple little nitpicks if we're going to sit down. Again, it's clear that they were very low budget, so they had to pick and choose which scenes they could really throw the budget in and which ones are like, okay, we're going to have to probably, skirt this a little bit. But, with the scenes where they really throw the budget in, the scenes with that CGI at the end with Lily just going digital scanners.
A little bit.
Just was insanely well done. The death scenes were great. So if you're willing to overlook that, this really was a wonderful, scary movie. If you're gonna, and for what it's worth, we were talking about this before we started. See, we both saw this in theaters, and I loved seeing it in a dark theater, as you do with horror movies. If you want to wait for this to come out on streaming, that's perfectly fine. Again, get Shudder. It's going to come out on that because Shudder was one of the production companies. But do yourself a favor. Turn off all the lights. Make sure there's no other sound. You want to watch this in a full, just enclosed area. You want to get absorbed by this film.
This is not a movie that in and of itself really requires the theatrical experience, but certainly benefits from, again, like the atmosphere that can be fostered there. So I'm with you. If you're budgeting and you do want to wait for this to come out on streaming, just watch it in the spirit it's intended to be watched in. Same thing with stuff like A Quiet Place. Like there's a little bit of gimmickry going on there with everything's quiet. So even the guy next to you eating popcorn a bit loudly is a little bit.
There was a news article when the movie came out with people complaining just because, it's like, sorry, if you see that movie in a theater, you have people eating popcorn, you have people drinking soda and slurping loudly. Side note, speaking of atmosphere, I love the cat ears in the background that just keep bobbing in and out of frame behind your chair.
That's just Guillermo back there. Don't worry about him.
I'm sorry, it's just cute. It's like I'm looking at you and all of a sudden I just see you out of the corner behind the chair. It's like cat ears.
Yeah, he pops up on occasion.
He's cute.
He's the big fluffy boy.
But yeah, no, this was this is a very good film. I say see it in theaters because it's one of those cases of go give our money to the movies that we want to see more of.
Yeah, I wish nothing but success for this film. Like I'm glad it exists. I'm happy to have more films of this quality get put out. Like kudos to pretty much everyone involved. Again, I have some minor nitpicks, but like F to A quality. This is a pretty solid B, bordering B plus.
I give it an A.
That's fair. I think the only other thing that kind of keeps it back from me is the scares here I appreciated on an intellectual level rather than actually being scared. And again, subjective a little bit because what scares other people isn't always going to scare you. But I do kind of need to be scared at least once by a movie if I'm going to bump it up very highly. And as unsettling as different parts of this were, it didn't actually scare me. And again, subjective. Other people might watch this and just okay, I'm not sleeping very well tonight, and hey, fair play. I'm not here to, no shame.
It is the unsettling nature that wins it for me with the scares. There's always, in a good horror movie, there is always the element of something is wrong.
Yeah.
Now, in a bad horror movie, something is wrong, and we're yelling at the people on screen, why the hell haven't you left yet? We go watch Night Swim, and it's like, open your eyes and get out of the pool.
Night Swim is it was a good short film.
Yeah, it was a
It
good
was
short
not
film.
a
It was
good-
not supposed to be made into a feature-length film.
Some stuff is not meant to be adapted that way. It's not meant to be expanded.
But the idea with a good horror film is that, again, there's the unsettling nature. We know something is wrong, but we understand why the characters are not abandoning ship. Jack sees the writing on the wall. He knows something is wrong. The look on his face when he's told that Christou is dead.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, shit. But you know why he's not cutting. You know why he wants to keep going. June is begging with him. I mean, she even mentions that Lily was calling his name the other day while she was in a trance before the show started, and Gus is telling him crew members have already left, and Gus is obviously a Christian. He's got the cross necklace, and he's sitting there going, I'm really not liking this. This is getting way too, uncomfortable for me.
Again, man, you're messing with stuff you should not mess with.
But you know why he's going for it.
Yeah.
You understand why Jack is saying, no, I'm going to power through this and we're going to keep going.
Yeah, again, to that point, you do need a good reason. And everyone that sticks around, you know why. Like, of course, Carmichael's there. He thinks this is all hooey.
You get to the point where they show the freeze frame, and Carmichael is I don't know if you want to say so in denial or just so committed to reason that he's convinced.
Yeah, he looks over at Jack and goes, really? Because his expression of, no, this actually makes perfect sense. You're in on this.
This was all planned from the beginning. Yeah.
And in a purely rational world, he's right, by the way. Like, that's not an unfair conclusion to draw.
For most of us, we are very logic based. We're going to, 2 + 2 does not equal shoe. So we're going to look for the most. What was it with the Invisible Man? When you have the scene where the young girl gets slapped, and even though it's clear to us that the main character did not slap her, her hand was the only one that was near her, so she's convinced the main character slapped her. It's like, well, obviously, she's looking at the only thing that makes any sense. She's not thinking, well, there's a ghost or there's an invisible person who slapped me.
Well, to that same effect, like, people don't understand how their eyes work. For those of you who don't know, these aren't lenses. Like, these are not cameras. Your eyes are better understood as probability generators than they are as, again, camera lenses. Takes in light, and your brain then does its best approximation of what's coming. This is why eyewitness testimony is so weird. In fact, it's highly unreliable. There are people who will tell you what they saw, stack of Bibles. The video evidence contradicts them, and they will still swear, stack of Bibles, I know what I saw.
I always find it interesting when you ask a group of people and you give them like a police sketch artist and you ask them to describe someone, and chances are pretty good you're going to get a completely different looking person with every single one of their descriptions. But they're not making this stuff up. They're not saying like, oh, and he had snakes coming out of his head or something. No, that's legit what they think the person would look like.
Same kind of thing. There are Major League Baseball players who will swear up and down that there are people who throw a fastball so hard that it does this and comes back up at the end. That is not how any of that works. What's happening is they're throwing it much harder than you anticipate. So your brain goes, here's the projected course. When the actual course is more like this. So what does your brain do? When you think it should be here and it's actually here, your brain corrects by giving it an arc instead of it's the only way it can make sense, because your eyes are trying to generate probability in real time. That's how this works.
Speaking of which, can we also agree just how great that whole review the footage on the live screening thing was? That was a brilliant idea. Really,
I was waiting, because you have him explaining it, and nobody's happy because we all know what we saw. And I was waiting, and I'm sitting here going, so what? Are we getting some more conflict going on right now? And then having the actual character be smart enough to go, play it back. You got monitors here.
Yeah, the idea is that we also were part of the mass hypnotism.
Yeah.
And I do like that they point out that, again, not only Lily, but a handful of the people in the audience.
Yeah, there were a few other people.
Yeah, they're like, no, I saw him. I didn't see the worms.
As someone who is deeply not suggestible to hypnosis, I've been to a few. If you've ever been to a hypnotist show, I'm not saying I can't be hypnotized, for the record. I've never had anyone.
Yeah, it's like, do not pull that card.
No. When I say deeply not susceptible to it, I don't mean immune.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've ever been to hypnotist shows or whatnot, what they're doing is very baseline. They're looking for people who are the most susceptible to it. It's why they always open with a fairly standard rhythm, and then they try to see, okay, you feel your arm getting lighter, and then we see whose hands go up, and okay, you guys come over, or you're hearing the funniest joke in the world, see who gets laughing, that kind of stuff. And that, again, like the generalized baseline hypnosis stuff has never worked on me. If somebody really sat down and tried to, maybe. Again, I certainly don't claim to be immune to it, but
you'd also have to really be willing to be hit. I mean, that's the main thing, is that so many people think that hypnotism could just be like, and you're under my power. That's not
that takes a lot of time. Again, the people who are more susceptible to it are the ones who get pulled up for Vegas shows and whatnot and start clucking like chickens, and it's fun, but you have to be susceptible to it. And I've been to enough of those like hypnotist shows to know that generalized hypnosis, I am not, again, for whatever reason.
We used to have
hypnotherapy might work on me, but that kind of stuff doesn't.
We had a hypnotist who came to our high school once a year and would do a presentation for the students. And I still remember, I think it was my junior year, we were hosting a foreign exchange student from Spain. I was a freshman. She was a junior. And she was one of the ones who ended up going up on stage. And I still remember joking about it with her while we were having dinner that night. I'm like, so Teresa, tell mom and dad about how you were driving a car and how your butt fell off and all this stuff. And she said she could remember a little bit of it, like it was a dream. But yeah, when I told her about her butt falling off, she just gave me this look like, what did you just say?
So yeah, but no, it's one of the nice things about this movie. These are smart characters making really bad decisions for very understandable reasons. And boy, is that a rare thing these days in character writing.
Yeah, again, we understand why Jack's pushing forward. We understand why Leo's pushing forward, and we understand why why everyone else who is screaming at him, red flags flying, why they're still there.
Yeah, 'cause Gus isn't going to abandon his on-air friend. He would have quit after the show had he not died.
Yeah.
But he's enough of a professional to not walk out mid-show. Again, we have the skeptic who, of course, he's going to stick around. He doesn't think there's any real danger here.
June is basically kind of being guilt-tripped by Jack, but also Lily wants to stay, and June's obviously not going to abandon her.
Yeah, she's being guilt-tripped by Jack, and she also has... If there was another minor criticism that I could levy at this, I would have liked to have seen her character's greed play up a little bit more, because she's here to promote her book, which is about to go on sale.
Mm-hmm.
And having a bit of that be, again, that's kind of why she's here. And having that play a little bit more into some of her decision making might have been nice to see played out. But again, very small complaint.
Yeah, it maybe even just a line of dialogue, maybe not even from her, but something from Jack or Leo saying, think about your book, think what this is going to do for the sales, just something like that to kind of, pull the little hook, pull her back in just a tiny bit more. Again, she doesn't have to be the one who says, well, it's for my book. Someone else can say, think about your book. Come, little fishy.
Let that be kind of the deciding factor, especially early. When you got kind of a weird feeling, but nothing's really gone sideways yet. It's like, I don't know about this. Like, you don't have another one of these. That book is about to start selling, and if you're not out there, I'm not going to hold it up to the camera and tell everyone again about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you are profiting from this. You are just as exploitative as everything else going on here.
Like, this is pre-internet, sweetie. You got to get the word out about your book in some way.
Yep. So again, minor criticism, but on the whole, really good movie. If you got the time and the inclination, worth seeing in theaters. If you don't have, again, if you want to wait for it to stream, fine and dandy. It's worth the 90-minute watch. It's nice to see a couple of, I think horror is going to have a good 2024, all things considered. It's one of the few. There were enough of these things in production that fall. Because what's the cap on the strike? It's a budget. There's a budget limit for when those big things go on strike. Like, it's only affecting movies
that have so high of a budget.
Yeah, there's a production budget cap, and certain different studios were actually more willing to accommodate some of the requests. And I think A24 was one of those ones that said, sure. There's a couple of these that don't apply to us anyway, and a few of these other things, yeah, we'll work with you. And so they weren't as impacted by the strike as everyone else. It's why there's so many A24 movies coming out this year, because they were the only ones running.
You know what? Credit to A24. They have really done some great work with promoting independent artists and independent work. Hell, I gushed over them because they released Has Been Hotel for Amazon Prime. They were the ones who snapped up VisiPop.
And I can't wait to be being more critical of them in a couple of the not too distant future when we review Civil War, which I think is.
There we go.
We'll wait for it, but.
Again, I mentioned this last night. Early reviews for it, like on IGN. IGN is one of my go-to entertainment sites. They actually gave it a glowing review.
I don't want to come across as too cynical here because I'm fairly cynical already.
Oh, please don't undersell it, Robert.
fairly cynical. The last 4 years, I've stopped. Early reviews have stopped being a thing I pay attention to because they're so carefully curated. The only time, which look, if you're the one releasing this movie, you're darn right you carefully curate the early reviews. The last thing you want is something really bad coming out because someone's got an axe to grind. I get it. I really do. But I also, the only time the early reviews have been a helpful indicator is when they're negative these days, which is, again, which is only because, if your carefully curated reviews are still lukewarm at best, oh boy.
Yeah, go take a look at our Ghostbusters Frozen Empire review for that.
Indeed. But Civil War, again, we'll see when it gets here. I haven't seen it, so we'll find out. But I'm always leery of obvious pandering in filmmaking, especially thematically.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But again, we'll review it later. I think that's more or less everything we wanted to do craft-wise. The last thing we do want to do, because we talked about the money last night when we reviewed, so go listen to our review of Frozen Empire.
So we actually have something else we want to talk about instead. Again, for those of you who are tuning in on Twitter, or where the hell else are you people tuning in on? We got one dude over on YouTube. Thank you for sticking with us. We usually go over the money where, we talk about how much this movie has made along with
in that vein, what is the only thing we should touch on is what's the budget for this? Because I don't think.
Hang on. I got the Wikipedia page open here.
Doesn't list one on Wiki. Huh.
No, it doesn't. Hang on a second. I do want to point this out. Media outlets noted that the total included a $666,666 gross on its third day.
Yeah, I saw that. Of course. Yeah, look, you got to make headlines somehow.
Really? I mean, I'm sorry. It's just But that's just hilarious. There is no other way around it.
So no
but
listed
yeah.
budget, but my hunch would be, what do you think? Probably 20 on the high end.
Let me see if I can pull it open on IMDb.
They
and
might
see
have a
if
better
it's
idea.
Yeah, hang on a second.
My hunch is somewhere between 20 and 50. Well, 50 would be a bit much.
Okay, let's see here. Directors, writers, you may like, connections, images, awards, critical
20 might
reviews,
even be a bit much now that I think about it.
state official sites, technical specs, box office, details, plot details.
Yeah,
I can't find anything.
If they're not reporting it, that again, less than 20 would be my hunch.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's pulled what, 3 and change?
Yeah.
So again, reasonable. If this had a reasonable budget and
well, 2.8 million in the first 3 days. Still the largest opening weekend for a film released by IFC Films.
Good for them. You know, again, actually, given how much they could have saved on sets and did, geez, this might have had a very small budget of like 5.
The benefits of shooting in one location.
Well, indeed. So anyway,
not to mention, you realize they probably just found like a local TV studio that somebody wasn't using and just rented it for a few months.
So again, man, this might have been even smaller than 5. Like, it's not impossible. So again, they're like 3.1 at this point in time, like to date. So we'll see if they wind up doing anything. Sort of depends on what Shudder might also have paid for the streaming rights, because that's part of what they do when as production goes. They will then put money towards towards that. So we'll see. But assuming a relatively modest budget, low budget horror is more than capable of turning a small profit. You know, horror is it's the little engine that actually powers the vast majority of what Hollywood studios do year to year, because you can do them cheap, make a profit, and just keep that machine churning while you then burn a giant pile of money on something else.
Wasn't that the motto for Touchstone Pictures?
Probably. It was New Lines for a long time.
I believe that.
Let's get another Nightmare on Elm Street movie out there, and that'll finance our next couple of disasters.
Well, I always point out with Touchstone Pictures, it's like, yeah, that's how they got Nightmare Before Christmas release, which now Disney loves to bank on that. It's like, oh no, that was a Disney production.
Sure, it was. We remember what Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures were. Those of us who were around, we remember.
Absolutely.
But, so in lieu of a legitimate discussion of the box office, because again, that would be redundant from yesterday, film Twitter got into a little bit of a tizzy about this movie when it was revealed that this movie, because this is about a late night talk show, it has cards, title cards that come up for heading to commercial break, and we'll be right back, and welcome back to the show, and all that good stuff.
You saw a lot more of these back in the day.
Yeah. But it has those, and people saw them, and it came out that these were used via image generation tools.
Translation, AI.
Which for the record, I don't like that that's become shorthand for, again, generative images or language models, because they're not actually intelligent, but I will acknowledge the shorthand. So these were, again, they were AI generated. Whatever the generative image tool of their choice was. I don't think they've mentioned which engine they were using, but
it doesn't say on any of the pages I have found. So we did
doesn't matter that much.
With all fairness, there are new generators being developed daily. So
indeed. So I don't know if it was Stable Diffusion or Dale E or whatever the one that
isn't it called OpenAI?
Well, OpenAI is like it covers a lot of like sub ones. So
because OpenAI made news lately, especially on Twitter, that they've been approaching studios and producers saying, hey, you should probably start using us more often, to which a lot of people were now, collectively, rubbing this part of their nose and saying, what the hell was the strike for? Because if you remember last year's double
that
strike.
was one, a lot of, we talked about this when we covered that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what they were talking, there was some overly greedy stuff about residuals, but that's number negotiation. Then the actors kind of shot themselves in the foot by asking for a percentage of all streaming subscriptions, and that didn't happen and was never going to. But a lot of the stuff, again, they wanted better residuals for streaming, which is not unfair. Like that really, and they wanted more transparency there, both of which I think are reasonable requests. Again, you can debate specifics. But the big thing the other big sticking point was they wanted assurances about the use of these are very powerful tools, for the record. And they wanted some safeguards put in place for that. And that was another decent sticking point for them.
Yeah, I think the general message was, for the love of God, can we not make this episode of Black Mirror come true?
And so because Twitter, especially the film/art side of Twitter, is they're a bunch of Luddites. Just saying it how it is. Anything, any generative image use, they are up in arms. They bring out the pitchforks and the torches, and where are we going? Riot's an ugly thing, and it's just about time that we had one. That's where we're going with all this. So there's a bunch of people that went, they used this tool, and I will never see this movie. Rah, 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 we're an angry mob. So,
well, Mark's not here. You got to say the line.
Somebody has to. It's true. It's in my contract.
It also should be pointed out that this version of this film that was screened at SXSW did not have these images. So you get a lot of reviewers who basically gave it a glowing review, and then it gets released with the AI images, and they're essentially going, if I had known that there was AI, I never would have agreed to give this such a glowing review. You tricked me, sir.
Yeah, and to those people we say, shut up.
Okay, so I do have a quote from our the directors, the Cairnes brother. It's Cameron. This was directed by two guys, Cameron and Colin. Again, I think it's Cairnes. It's Cairnes.
I would assume Cairnes.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like when you put that many vowels in there, I don't know which one is supposed to get the the emphasis. Their quote here saying, "In conjunction with our amazing graphics and production design team, all of whom worked tirelessly to give us this the 70s aesthetic we had always imagined, we experimented with AI for 3 still images, which we edited further and ultimately appear as very brief interstitials. Thank you. No, that's not it. There's no R. Interstitial. Yeah, there's a second R there in the film. David Dastmalchian said, so I think Cameron and Colin really said it well, and I stand by what they said, and I completely stand by this movie as a thoroughly original piece of work, that so many man hours went into this incredible artistic craftsmanship to be set in this world. So it's a good conversation to have. It's an important conversation. We've got to have it. So the argument they're making is that they used AI as a base, but then they edited it further, which a lot of people actually say is a good tool for AI.
It is. Okay. So here's the problem that a lot of people are going to run into with this. It's all you did was type in words into a prompt and then pulled the slot machine lever until you got something you liked. Guys, if you have enough time to regenerate an image based on a singular prompt until you get something you like you may as well have written a program to do that for you. It's not that easy. But if you're overly lazy, that's what you'll do. That's not the way to use these tools. This is the same argument. This is fundamentally an extension of the old argument that, what do you mean you didn't actually do anything artistic? That was chemicals and a lens for a photograph instead of a painter. That was an argument put forward at that point. What do you mean you're drawing on your computer? Pick up a pencil, because clearly Photoshop is the cheap way to do this. It's full of shortcuts.
As an artist who uses Photoshop and Illustrator for like 99.99999% of the artwork that goes on my jewelry.
Yeah, this is the conversation that gets had every time a new tool is brought forth. AI, generative, these image generators that's all they are. They're a tool that is brought forth. There are people who are going to use them unethically, and that needs to be said, and that needs to be handled. Mm-hmm. I don't know how exactly we're going to deal with it, but to anyone saying that AI art is nothing but theft, no. I don't think that's correct. There might be individuals who train specific models only on specific things, but at that point, again, you're using the tool improperly. That's on you. If you put anything that you put out into the public domain, not public domain, that's a legal category. If you put your artwork on the internet, you automatically basically acquiesce to fair use. Now, that doesn't mean someone can take it specifically. And again, anyone who trains models on specific images to replicate them unfairly, that's a problem. You should sue them. I'm not kidding about that. Defend your copyright. But you can't copyright a style. And every artist, I don't care what your medium is, whether it's pen and paper, whether it's digital, whether it's clay, whether it's paint, whether it's writing, whether it's filmmaking, you start by emulating things you like. Everywhere. That's all this is doing, is basically emulating. And in some cases, not all that great. Like this is far from perfect technology, as everyone knows. But
we still get a lot of people with 6 fingers and noses where the noses should not be.
Fingers are hard.
Fingers are hard. Ears are hard.
As we all know. But as a tool, let me tell you a couple of things that you should be doing with this, if you don't mind. One,
floor is yours. Soapbox is yours.
One, if you're going to hire an artist, if you can make the collaboration easier by generating some stuff and going, here's aspects I like. If you need a Dark Souls castle in the style of Disney, which is not actually the same as a Disney castle in the style of Dark Souls, believe it or not the same thing. But if that's what you want, like this is your mental image, put that into a prompt, get it to spit out half a dozen things, circle some stuff you like, go to your artist and say, I like this, I like this, I like this. Please incorporate these elements. Here's a couple of very specific things. I need a flag with this crest on it. Yada, like you continue about but if you can, anything that you can do to make it easier for an artist that you're hiring to put what's in your head down is going to make life for everyone easier. Instead of an artist having to do 8 different renditions that you then go through after the fact, this will help streamline that process. If you're a little bit strapped for time and cash and you want these interstitial title cards, get your graphics designer, sit them down with the AI and say, okay, we need Halloween themed 1970s style talk show title cards.
Show is called Night Owl, so maybe have an owl show up.
That play between these things. Get that to spit out a few images. Find a few things you like. Use Photoshop. Refine it. Lobster. It will make your job so much easier. I can't sit there and just generate images until I get something I like. If you know what you're doing, get a base image, especially if it's like background related stuff. Like get something that has the background setting that you like. Then copy that over, remove everything else, do the rest of your work. Get a pose that you like, stuff like that. There's innumerable ways to incorporate these tools into your workflow in an ethical fashion.
I was going to say, I have a friend who loves to play around with the AI generators. He's not he's a writer, so I can't say he's not an artist, but he's, not that kind of artist. He just loves to just randomly,
they're fun.
Yeah, he just loves it. It's like, take a picture. Okay, now, edit it, make it look like this. He just loves to come up with that. But he has sent me a ton of them. He would get bored every now and then, just send me, it's like, hey, check this out. And he sent me like 5 pictures that he had just popped out of the generator. But a couple of them I saved because I looked at them like, I would like to incorporate that style into a painting. I'm not going to present that direct piece as art, but I like the lighting and I like those colors. And I think I could, have fun trying to recreate that with my, my paint set.
Yeah. The best way to look at some of these generative tools, I've heard it described as, think about it like a force multiplier for your creativity. It lets you get stuff done faster. Mm-hmm. And if there's some part of the artistic process that you're not good at, don't be afraid to use it. Like, again, if you have a good sense of, line work and anatomy, but your coloring sucks, do the line work, upload it and say, please color this. Like, it'll do it for you. It'll make that easier. And especially if you're still learning, like, this will give you ideas. It'll give you stuff to work from. It's not nearly powerful enough to just completely replace anyone. The best people to make something out of this is not the producer sitting there punching the slot machine over and over again. It's the artist who can maximize what this offers you as a tool for streamlining and improving your productivity.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can agree that the Photoshop commercials currently advertising their AI generators, which essentially amounts to fill this with type this. Yeah, no, we don't want that. Again, that is literally taking someone's job.
Yeah, and I've seen some other people mention that, okay, so if you part of what you're doing with generative tools is, okay, you're no longer an artist, you're an editor. And I'm not even saying that's a wholly unfair argument. I am going to say that you can't on one hand say that editors are responsible for everything and then denigrate that profession. What's the bit? Like, 80% of all editors in Hollywood are female, which means everything you've seen is actually directed by a woman because that's what you see.
Yeah, some of the best editors are women. I know Quentin Tarantino will back that up.
Oh, yeah. I am not shaming that at all. I'm just saying if your complaint is, you're not an artist, you're an editor, like, are you not editing what you do, artist? Of course you are. We all do it all the time. I understand some of the fear that's come out about this, and don't get me wrong, these are tools that can be used unethically, and I think that that's a thing that needs to be dealt with. But pretending that a tool this powerful is just gonna go away, I think is a bit. No, that internal combustion engine will never take off. Nothing will replace the horse. Like, that's kind of where we are with this a little bit.
The fact is that AI as a tool is here to stay, whether we like it or not. So the best thing that we can do, especially to my fellow artists, is we need to find ways to work with it. Mm-hmm. We need to find a better way to understand it, and we need to find a better way to use it. Again, if you're just typing in stuff, slapping it on a picture or into a picture frame and trying to sell that, no, I'm giving you the middle finger.
Yeah, that's a poor idea.
Yeah, not to mention, as nearly every Comic-Con vendor or Comic-Con that I work has put out a statement saying they will not allow people to sell AI generated work. And good on them. But, it's like, got to draw the line in the sand somewhere. But we need to better understand it. We can't just say, nope, not going to use it. Nope, not going to look at it. It's going to go away, because it's not, guys.
No, it's too powerful a tool for it to just go away. Again, the beneficiaries of this are not the untrained people. Like, again, I'll play around with the image generators, but I can't, I have no ability to manipulate them beyond, hey, I kind of think that looks cool. Or, again, just playing around with them because they're fun. So play around with them. But if you want to, again, if you can incorporate that into your workflow, if you have a big idea, getting something that starts more finished, then you refine it, you edit it, you add to it, you again, you create off of that base. There's complaining about that seems, and that's what they did here again for this particular film. Like, okay, we're maybe a little short on time, and rather than try to start from scratch and us try to, okay, so what do we think this might be? Let an image generator spit out 18 ideas in a couple of seconds, and then go, okay, don't like this idea, give them to the human and say, put these together. We want one that does this thing because our fictional studio is reminiscent of NBC. So if we can mess with the little swoop, get an Art Deco owl in there a little bit, and just refine what's going on. You saved time, you saved money. It's still produced by a human. The end product is not just what was spat out of the generator. This is not the hill to die on, people. If this is a 200, also like this thing's budget was minuscule by logical standards. If this is a $200 million movie and it's just horribly managed and we start leaning on this, we can, I'm more than willing to throw more shade at that. Let's be realistic about what smaller productions are going to be able to do. And again, this was not just generated and slapdashed into the film. They wanted this very specifically. They had a tool. They had people use it and edit it and refine it. Yeah, again, at this point, we're like, oh, you used a picture instead of a paintbrush to do the landscape or the portrait. Again, not the hill to die on as it relates to this new technological tool. Sorry.
Yeah, guys, you're not going to win every battle, so save your strength for the asshole who tries to sell you a script that was written by ChatGPT.
And for the record, if you are a writer, don't be afraid to use those. At a bare minimum, anytime you get stuck, which has happened to all of us,
yeah,
talk with it. It will basically fill the function of a writer's group before you meet with your writer's group. Even if all that thing does is give you bad ideas, which frequently happens, if even one of those bad ideas breaks you out of your block and gets your mind going in the right direction, it's worth the time and the energy because it's easy. These are easy tools that are designed to make this an easier process, not to completely replace anyone. That's not really possible at the moment. Generative tools can only regurgitate or recombine. They can't actually create. Or, well, I shouldn't say that. They can't innovate is a better way to phrase that.
It's a good way to put it. All right. Well, I think we have talked about that enough. What do you say we go ahead and move on to the critical review?
Let's have a look at our friends, shall we?
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, so yeah, pretty glowing reviews here. 96% on the tomato meter, 83% on the audience score.
That's about right.
Yeah.
This is a movie that is going to appeal to critics a little bit more than the general audience. So that tracks.
May I also say, speaking of AI, whichever AI decided that if you like this, you should watch Children of the Corn.
Is that the most? That's the most recent one too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, please do yourself.
Okay, hang on. That's not AI. That would just be the algorithm, and
algorithm failed.
That most of the rest of those I can kind of get with, but that one, nope. You missed on that one, buddy.
All right, critics' consensus. Delightfully dark, Late Night with the Devil proves possession horror isn't played out and serves as an outstanding showcase for David Dastmalchian.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about this for the last couple of possession movies. Like, it's a hard line to walk for a lot of things because you have to approach that with a degree of sincerity, and most writers, movies, or whatnot these days are not willing to do that. Thankfully, this one was.
All right, let's see if we can find someone here. Let's check this out. Alistair Harkness from The Scotsman.
No true Scotsman, he.
Yeah, I was like, as someone of actual Scottish heritage, I find that a little offensive. This much-hyped indie horror squanders a promising premise with corny execution, a botched found footage framing device, and a general lack of tension.
This is a person who's just very used to the tropes.
Yeah, I was like, did we see the same movie, dude?
Again, I can understand the corny, campy execution being a little bit dissonant until you remember it's a 1977 late night talk show. That is the aesthetic. It has to be there or it's inauthentic.
Okay, normally we don't review or read the positive reviews if we're actually agreeing with this, but I got to read this one from Mark Kermode from Kermode and Mayo's Take on YouTube Talk Critic. It becomes Alan Partridge Goes to Hell.
If you get Alan Partridge out of the main character here, you have badly misread what's going on.
I'm like 90% sure this dude just Alan Partridge was the Partridge Family was like the only show they could think of from the 1970s.
No. He didn't want to make the Brady Bunch reference, so he went with the Partridge Family.
In all due respect, as little as it connects to the Partridge Family, it connects even less to Brady Bunch, and I think this dude even knew that.
I'm just saying, like he was sitting there going, "What's my comparison here?" Brady Bunch first came to mind, and he went, "Okay, but what's like the Brady Bunch?" And got to Partridge Family.
All right. Yeah. God, so many positive. That's part of the problem when we review, movies that everyone likes is that we want to make fun of the critics we disagree with. It's like, well, shit, we agree with all of these. I do like this one from Christian Emlyn from Fort Worth Weekly. A quarter century since the Blair Witch Project coined a new subgenre of horror movies, this film shows us that creative filmmakers can still mine it for something new.
Okay. Not that I'm going to beat this drum too hard, but if you think found footage became a thing with the Blair Witch Project, you are somewhat illiterate to the history of cinema.
It's hard to say because while found footage obviously existed before the Blair Witch, I think that the Blair Witch Project was the one that really pushed it into the public eye and really jump-started the genre.
I think it was the first genuine mainstream attempt at it. And partially what's going on with Blair Witch that was different from other found footage movies before it was the only one that was exclusively that. Most of the other found footage stuff was watching a movie about people finding footage rather than just presenting the found footage. So,
like Cannibal Holocaust. Gotcha.
Yeah, like that's the one that was, and there's several. I mean, that was one of the more infamous ones, but there were a few before it that played with that iteration. But still, I appreciate you trying to use the touchstone of Blair Witch Project, but again, I'm not sure that's the one I would have gone with. Especially seeing as it is found footage, but because it's found professional footage, it doesn't feel like found amateur footage.
Agreed. Very much so. And yeah, frankly, I'm sick to death of those films. If for no other reason, I, like many, can only handle so much shaky cam in one setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. As you get older, your ability to not get motion sickness, it diminishes with every single day. I'm officially I can only ride half the rides at Worlds of Fun in Kansas City now.
I went to see Cloverfield opening night with my brother, one of our mutual friends. I might have been somebody else too. Watching that movie midnight in a theater that because it's so late, the air conditioning's turned off.
Oh dear God,
that's gonna make you puke. I didn't, but again, one of our friends who a little bit susceptible to that, I understood his struggle there.
Yeah. Okay, Matt Zoller cites from RogerEbert.com, again, top critic. The movie gets its own way and trips over itself repeatedly.
Not sure I agree with that.
Not sure I understand it.
Well, when a movie gets in its own way, there's frequently errors of execution. It's unforced errors is a better way to think of that in some respects. Going to phrase this carefully. If you were to add another $4 to $5 million to this thing's budget, there is a better movie to be had here. But pretending that budgetary constraints aren't a thing is a bit disingenuous. And this movie maximized what it had. rather than, and it should be taken on those terms more so than almost lamenting what could have been under different circumstances, because under different circumstances, the whole thing's different, and delving too much into, what if and if only is kind of a fool's errand.
Sorry about the background noise. Somebody decided she wanted to add her commentary about how someone's walking their dog late at night.
We appreciate Cleo's contribution. It's a shame Cleo was cut from the ending of the movie. Sorry, that's a reference to the film where they have a jazz singer supposed to take them out that they cut for time.
Shit, that was actually a good joke. Congratulations, you got me.
I try for one a show.
Okay, Eric Langberg from Everything's Interesting. No, it's not. Considering how flagrantly Late Night with the Devil betrays its own aesthetics in other ways, ditching the found footage concept whenever it's inconvenient, I think the answer is that we shouldn't accept any AI at all. This is one of those critics who really couldn't get off his high horse about the AI and decided to find other ways to complain about it. He clearly misses the point of switching between the two aspect ratios.
Yeah, first of all, that's one that's set up in the opening monologue. 2, it's there for a very specific reason. 3, pretending that this thing is ditching its concept when convenient is ridiculous. It's operating a story within specific constraints. I don't know what you're on about here. Again, this is a guy who couldn't see the forest for the trees about a small budget film using tools to save time and money that they did not otherwise have. Look, get off your horse, man.
We got 2 reviews here back to back. Again, this seems to be a real problem with some of these critics, is that they don't like that this is a found footage style movie that mixes its style. It's not just found footage. It's supposed to be found footage mixed with a documentary. You got
it's the documentary mixed with the professional broadcast.
Well, yeah.
And for some reason, that's tripping these people up, and I don't get it.
Yeah, so you got Edwin Art. Can I host one show where I'm not massacring everyone's last name? Seriously.
Dude, Mark has been asking for that for years, and we don't let him get away with it either.
This dude from Asheville Movies squanders its potential to be an overlong buildup that's too disjointed to be suspenseful, as well as numerous cheats on its found footage premise. Yeah, and then down here, we got Mark with Mark Review Movies, saying every time the Cairnes brothers stop the show or toy with the medium, the illusion is broken and the suspense goes along with it. They just really didn't like this style of filmmaking.
If you don't understand the ways in which the tension is carried over between segments during the commercial break, I can understand how jarring that is, but these are people who were desperate for a score to tell them that the tension was still building instead of actually paying attention.
Yeah. Now, for what it's worth, I'm also not seeing a lot of our usual reviewers, but I think
a lot of people were reviewing the other bigger releases instead of this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see Jeff, I don't see Kevin Carr, I don't see Doug Walker, Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman. Looks like they all went ahead and did their review of either Ghostbusters or Immaculate. I saw a lot of them did that one as well.
Yeah, this was kind of the third string horror release, and it unfortunately came out behind another horror movie, which is what Immaculate is.
I gotta ask, can Sydney Sweeney actually act? Because I'm hearing praise for her role in Immaculate, but I'm also sitting back going, I watched her scenes from Madam Web and Anybody But You, and she was god awful in those. So I'm just saying, now everyone say she's great in Immaculate. I'm like, okay, so can she act?
I've not seen enough of her work to really be able to weigh in on that. So I'm going to defer to people who have seen more of her work that have generally seemed to land on yes. I think one of the caveats for her might be, I think she's a better television actor than film actor.
Yeah, because I hate to say it, every time I think I've found someone who actually is saying she's a good actress, instead all they're talking about is the size of her tracts of land.
They're swearing allegiance to her cleavage.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to go ahead and get that out of there. Looks like, yeah. We usually try to find our favorite reviewers. We like to find the ones who come up over and over again. But yeah, it looks like they either reviewed Ghostbusters or Immaculate. Unfortunately, seeing 3 movies in one weekend is a little too exhausting for people like us.
Well, and to be honest, Immaculate doesn't interest me. This one I found to have an interesting premise and was curious about. Immaculate seems generic.
Very much so. And admittedly, with the first Omen coming out, I can't help but feel like that has a better idea of the concept than this one did. I mean, I looked at I looked at the 2 trailers. Like they looks like they're both trying to sell me on the same deal. And the first Omen legit looked like it would be more interesting than Immaculate.
100%. I mean, oh, do I reference this or not?
You already,
All right. Yeah, no, I'm going to. Okay. Having sat through Lars von Trier's Antichrist, the whole concept is a little played out for me.
You poor man. No one should willingly sit through Lars von Trier's films.
You know, there's actually stuff up. That man is way up his own ass. But I think there's 2 that I will recommend on occasion of his. If you've got the stomach for it, and you need the stomach for it, I actually think Antichrist is a decent horror film. And I don't hate Melancholia.
You just really have to be in the right mindset to go through that.
Oh, yeah. That's I don't recommend either of them lightly.
No.
You got to be specific about those, but...
Or you're going to need a shit ton of alcohol at the end.
I mean, it's not like... I don't recommend either part of Nymphomaniac to anybody for obvious reasons.
No.
It's just, they're not good movies.
Shia LaBeouf being, part of it, notwithstanding.
Did he do The House That Jack Built? That might be the only other one that I occasionally will recommend.
I think so, but don't quote me on that.
Again, I'm kind of with you. I think that was his. And that one, again, I will occasionally recommend. But one, again, you have to be in a very specific frame of mind. And even that one's a little bit, again, it's just dicey to try and I appreciate the fact that he is singular with his vision. I wish he would find a good collaborator to help refine that, because some of his stuff, man, like there's a reason I don't watch I will never go into one of his movies again, barring certain specific recommendations from people I trust, because I don't trust him as a filmmaker anymore.
You and me both. I've suffered with anxiety and depression too much. I can't watch his movies. They fuck with my brain. I can't sit through them.
I completely understand. And if Mark listens to this review, he's now going, wait a minute, Robert, you didn't recommend me 2 movies called Nymphomaniac? What's wrong with you? Like,
you don't hate him that much.
He wouldn't get through. I shouldn't say that. Mark's willing to watch some weird, challenging stuff, so he'd probably get through part 1 and then have to really think about whether or not he wanted to take that trip again for part 2. But now that we've talked about Lars von Trier far more than he deserves.
Can't believe we ended up talking about him on this show about Late Night with the Devil.
You brought up Immaculate and the concept of, the Antichrist being brought into the world. And considering that my introduction to Lars von Trier was Antichrist.
Oh, I just got a fun text from my mom. She went over to her sister's house and watched American Fiction, and she loved it.
That tracks. It's a good movie.
Yeah. Oh, I was highly recommending they watch it. They finally saw that in Holdovers and Killers of the Flower Moon. Good. They adored Holdovers. They said Killers of the Flower Moon was good, but they really couldn't handle how long it was.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand all of that.
Yeah. All right. So I think we could go ahead and move into our plugs. So now, for those of you who enjoyed us talking about horror, but were wondering, wait, wasn't this supposed to be an unholy trinity? We do have two other horror collaborators, Mr. Jason Teasley and Dorian Price, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight due to scheduling conflicts. We miss you both, but we look forward to when and yes, it is Unholy Trinity with 4 people. When we return
The unholy tetralogy.
Well, I'm not calling us the 4 horsemen. That's been done way too many times.
It has.
Because seriously, I actually thought about it. I'm like, no, I'm avoiding that cliche. But either way, we will be back next month to discuss our next, hopefully enjoyable horror film. We're going to be looking at Abigail as we watch a group of kidnappers have to deal with a child ballerina vampire.
The director in question there is batting 500 for me, but I know plenty of people who liked Scream 6 a lot more than I did.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's also from the guy who did Ready or Not.
Yeah, that was
such a good movie.
This is a guy who I'm willing to follow a little bit here. Ditto. It's why I have a modicum of hope for Alien Romulus, despite that being a really stupid title. Because that's actually being directed by Fede Alvarez, and he hasn't let me down necessarily yet. And I have a deep affection for his remake, basically, of Evil Dead. So,
what was the last Alien movie that came out after Prometheus?
Covenant.
Okay, so I apparently saw Covenant and completely forgot about it. Because someone later said,
not
"Wait,
blame you one iota."
Because Andre was watching. He's like, "You want to watch with me?" I'm like, I have no interest in seeing that. But then I walked in at the end. I'm like, "Oh wait, I saw this." I literally had no memory of it.
I will stick up for Prometheus, actually, believe it or not. That's one of those movies that I think it gets a little unfairly maligned. Don't get me wrong, it has problems. It's not perfect.
Oh yeah.
But it got a lot of hate for not being what people expected when it was never promised.
Yeah, we all thought that we were going to get all the answers to the alien mythos in that movie, and it's like, no, that is not what it was supposed to be in any way, shape, or form.
And because people's expectations were all over the place, they reacted poorly to it. Again, I'll defend Prometheus as a pretty decent little sci-fi flick with a slight twist of horror. Covenant is so bad it should not be studied. It should be buried and forgotten.
It still makes me laugh though, because every time a new Alien movie comes out, and I'll admit the Romulus trailer looks good.
Oh yeah, I like the director. As long as Ridley Scott wasn't writing it and is just basically doing like the basics of producer role, there's a chance.
I hate to say it. I look at Ridley Scott. It's like you're getting to make Gladiator 2. Okay, no, go sit down. Sit down.
Ridley Scott has lost the plot, and it's been lost for a long time.
Yeah. What was the line someone said? It's like, we all saw Hannibal, and then we all said, "You okay, Mr. Scott? Are you okay?"
That's not my. I tracked this out one time. Like, what's the point at which he fell off?
Well, it was well before his attempt at telling the story of Moses with all white actors.
When did he do that? If you're talking about Gods of Egypt, that's not the story of Moses. Because Gods of Egypt.
No. Gods of Egypt was that terrible, overly CGI film from Alex Proyas.
Okay.
You know what?
Like I'm right there, though.
No, hang on. You know, it starred Christian Bale. Let me just look up his.
Oh, right. What the heck was that?
I'm looking at Exodus, Gods and Kings.
Gods and Kings, that was it. Okay.
Yeah, no, that was the one that had Joel Edgerton as Ramesses and John Turturro and Sigourney Weaver as the pharaoh and his wife.
Yeah, that was the point. I think that was the turning point for a lot of people. I actually, much as I don't like his version of Hannibal, it's too much a Ridley Scott movie, but as a Ridley Scott movie, it's actually okay. It misunderstands the source material a bit too much.
Yeah, it's a
taken on
complete
those
departure
terms.
from the book.
But, trying to deal. Then again, man, Hannibal itself is such a trip as a book. I am so glad that Bryan Singer did it. Not Bryan Singer. No, Bryan Singer, right? The guy who did the TV show Hannibal. I'm misremembering his last name.
I can't remember.
But I'm so glad that somebody else took that story on and basically got it right.
Hannibal TV series.
The showrunner for that.
Michael Reinder?
No.
Brian Fuller?
Fuller, that's it. Thank you.
There's the list. Okay. All right. So, okay. All right. So, yes, we'll be talking Abigail when that comes out next.
Fun.
I'm looking forward to it. I am.
I like a good tongue-in-cheek gore fest, and I think we'll get a lot of violence out of that. So I'm down.
You know what? Horror comedy is a great genre. It's one of our favorites here at the Unholy Trinity.
Somebody else mentioned this line. I think it's from one of the most recent Overly Sarcastic Productions Trope Talks videos.
I love those guys.
Which, thank you. If there was, if you don't understand the reference, but because Red mentions at one point that the line between horror and comedy is really darn thin, probably thinner than either one wants to admit. And one of the comments below was, they're both aware of it. Comedy's just okay with it. Horror is the one that's a little bit standoffish about how close those two are.
I always think about it how comedy is defined as tragedy plus time. Horror is just we haven't had the time yet.
Generally. That's why you couldn't watch Dr. Strangelove when it came out and think it was all that funny necessarily because you were actually worried about that. Nowadays,
it's one of the freaking best movies ever.
Yeah, man, I wish Kubrick wasn't as crazy, but if he wasn't as crazy, he might not have given us everything that he did. So, got to play the hand you're dealt.
Well, see, this is now why I wish Dorian was here, because he and I have a long-standing feud about Kubrick's The Shining.
Which one of you likes it and which one doesn't?
I love it. It's my all-time favorite scary movie. Yeah, he refuses to accept it because of how different it was from the book.
But I accept that that's a valid criticism of it if you're coming to it from it. I honestly approach it more as inspired by than adapted from.
I could see that. I personally just don't care. I just absolutely love it. Again, it's my favorite scary movie.
Oh yeah, and poor actors. It's you know what? I'll give Kubrick this. He knew enough not to traumatize the child actor.
Yeah. Now traumatizing Shelley Duvall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead and have fun with that.
And there's a reason he and Jack Nicholson never worked together again.
Poor Scatman Crothers falling on his knees going, "What do you want from me, Mr. Kubrick?"
And there's a reason Harvey Keitel walked off of Eyes Wide Shut.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look, man, the 150th time you have me walk through the revolving door, I'm starting to think you're not respecting my time. Anyway.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and do your plugs first? Where can our viewers on... Wow, Mark wasn't kidding. All of our viewers are on freaking Twitter.
Hello, Spaces on Twitter.
All right. Where can our followers find you?
If you're interested in combat sports and adjacent things, I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. MLW, when they have something, WWE SmackDown every Friday. Occasionally I pinch hit in other areas, and UFC events on Saturdays. If you're more interested in the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts, I host a podcast Sunday evening, so it's not live. So it goes up Monday mornings early, the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Listen to me predict fights, review fights, and talk about, again, all things combat sports. It's a good time if you're interested. And you can find me Mondays or Tuesdays, scheduled depending on Damn You Hollywood, here on the W2M network, where we talk movies just like we did tonight. So tune in for any and all of that. Anything you can do to help our channels. So like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review, whatever's applicable to your listening or viewing platform of choice. Always appreciated. Thank y'all very, very much. We would be here without you. It just wouldn't be as much fun.
All right. And while I do join them on Damn You Hollywood for a handful of movies, I only jump ship when it's something like Madam Web, and I say I already suffer enough for you, Mark. I'm not putting myself through that hell.
We all understand.
I do host TV Party Tonight. We are, unfortunately, we're not doing any TV Party Tonights for like a month because all of the shows that we want to review are currently running. So it's simply a case of, well, I can't talk about it till the show frickin' ends.
Yep.
Now, we did recently just talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action edition that came out on Netflix. So if you want to.
Man, the Netflix curse. How have they only had one? Have they had one good one of these live action adaptations? One.
Wait. Which one?
One Piece.
Okay, good. I was like, you are so on thin ice, mister, if you don't say the right one.
I can tell you why One Piece didn't suck, too. It's very simple.
No, I love the one. Yeah, Dave. Okay, we do have a TV Party Tonight where David Wright and I reviewed One Piece. We had a lot of fun talking about that. As far as shows that we are currently waiting to finish so we can do discussions on that, we're going to be talking X-Men 97, which just aired its third episode of our day of recording. Guess which villain has just reared his ugly head again? If you've been following the show, it's.
I'm not.
Okay, then.
Hang on. No, so I'm trying to guess a little bit here. You said ugly head.
Well, I don't think any of the villains in X-Men are going to win a beauty pageant.
Oh, you're going to piss off the Mystique stands with that one.
It's not Mystique.
They introduced Gyrax previous week, right? So it wouldn't be him. Did they seriously bring Sinister back this early? You know what? At least one property treats that character with some respect, and hopefully.
Well, they're doing the Gene clone saga.
You need Sinister for that. Yay. Yeah. Clones. We remember the 90s when every comic had a clone saga. Unless we talk about the Spider-Man one, the better, right?
Yeah, what was that? 50 issues?
It was a lot. And it inadvertently led to Chasm many years down the line. So there's that.
All right. So we're going to be discussing that. We got House of the Dragon coming up. We have Fallout coming up, which I am actually not hosting on that one. We have another reviewer here at the Radulich and Broadcasting Network who is a humongous Fallout fan, has played all the games, whereas I'm a gamer, but Fallout is not a series I've had a lot of time to really get into. So I am acquiescing my reins to him for the night so he can discuss it because I think he's going to bring a lot more to the table than I probably could. Still going to watch it. We were discussing last night about the possibility of adding Shogun onto our schedule because we've all either seen it and loved it or heard it's great. So we'll be hopefully adding.
I'm waiting for it all to be done so I can binge it because I don't think if it's that good, I don't want to wait week to week. I'm selfish that way.
I can understand that. I actually joke with Mark when we do a lot of reviews that I try to hold off and binge all of it if I can, because if we're doing multiple shows that are all playing at the same time, if I start watching them all together, they start to blur together.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to watch Upload and Only Murders in the Building at the same time is not a good idea. Both great shows. I love them both. And we've done TV Party Tonights for both.
If you've got to talk about them afterwards, you have to keep a lot of stuff straight in your head.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a case of, okay, I'm going to wait till that's all done, and then I'm going to watch all of it. I do the same thing with Resident Alien. Again, great show. Cannot wait to talk about the new season. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that. Looking forward to it. In the meantime, though, as far as the plugs that actually do pay my bills, we got my company, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. And, oh, God, I need to fix that. That's got sold. I need to take care of that. Yeah. Oops. All right. So now I did mention this all last night on our Ghostbusters Frozen Empire review. We did just wrap up our convention at Planet Comic-Con. Record attendance, record sales. Thank you so much, Keith David and Matthew Lillard, for bringing out your fans. You guys rock. We're going to be doing LPL Con in Lawrence coming up soon. I need to go ahead and get some paperwork done there so I can get my table reserved. We're taking a little light on the convention scene this year. Still doing a few of our standbys. We're going to be at Greater Austin Comic-Con in a few months. Guess who they just announced they got as a guest?
Give me a hint.
Accordion.
Weird Al.
Mm-hmm. I have actually never heard of him working a Comic-Con. I am so excited. That's going to be awesome. So we're going to be doing that. We, of course, will be also heading to Colorado Springs Comic-Con. We always do the Cincinnati Comic Expo in the fall. Looking forward to that. We'll possibly be doing a couple of local shows here in the Kansas City area this year. Again, doing a little light on the shows, but of course, our online shops are still open, still thriving. You can find us. This is our Etsy shop here. You can see a variety of our items, all handmade and upcycled from various game tokens. We also have a shop on Handmade at Amazon. And as always, if you want to follow us, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I will never call it X. Screw you, Elon Musk, and TikTok. I still need to get a lot better at making TikTok. What was the line from last night? It's like you need to do it's like so I need to get up to like 100,000 followers. I'm like, I don't even have 100. So still working on it. Still trying.
TikTok is weird in that it provides the best opportunity to go viral, but it has the worst retention rate after you do.
Pretty much. It's not easy. It's not easy to stand out on TikTok. Nope. So, but yes, you can go and find us on all of that. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creation, the intersection of geek and chic. So for myself, for Mr. Robert Winfree, thank you for joining the admittedly not quite unholy trinity, as we're going to call it tonight.
The unholy duology.
I like that. All right. Again, thank you for joining us. Be well, be safe. Mark doesn't pay us enough for this.